Hey everybody, it's Pastor Siri. I am a Lutheran pastor and a spiritual seeker, and today I want to talk a little bit about fundamentalism and a conversation that I recently had, on social media. And I wanted to ask the question, can atheists be fundamentalists? Take a listen. So here's the story. I was on social media, Imgur, which is a place I often like to go to watch funny videos about animals and people falling over or who knows what. And there was a kind of an interesting meme that was like looking at progressive perspectives of what we could change with our country. And I was like, these are all really, really great. And then I read the comments, which often can have insight and humor at times. And then there was sort of this comment that I see so often that's like, tax all the churches. And I know I should have just moved on. I do very often. But I just decided to comment because sometimes I like to assume ignorance over malice. And I just said, hey, a vast majority of churches in the United States, 80%, are really, really small churches. They are operating on a very, very tight shoestring budget. And if they were taxed, then they basically would cease to exist. And I can go more into what that looks like. I can talk more about that if you're interested in another video about that. And the comments that came back were very mean-spirited. Basically, some people were like, yeah, screw them, let them all close. I hate churches. I hate all of the things. And then there was a person who commented and said, nope, even in a small church, all pastors have a Mercedes or a Cadillac, every single one of them. And I wrote back, I'm like, hi, so I'm a pastor and I have a lot of pastor friends and none of us live in a really nice house. None of us live in have a big car or a Mercedes. Of course, what I didn't say, there wasn't room, is oftentimes these pictures come to us from the news media. We see big, huge evangelical churches and we see mega churches and we see people who, yes, I do think at times, fleece their congregations or use their congregations as a money-making scheme. But that's not anyone I know. And I know hundreds of pastors. That's not anything that I know in my denomination and other places. So again, it was sort of this generalizing, and he wrote back just a very dismissive, didn't articulate or respond to what I was actually addressing, which was, the wealth and the fleecing part. And he just said, I'm sorry you believe in a daddy in the sky and you're just peddling that bullshit kind of thing. And I wrote back, I said, that's not what I believe. I can see this is not an issue that you are able to have a conversation about. So goodbye, peace be with you. And I'm assuming this person is an atheist, but this is in line with many other conversations I've had with people who have dismissed religion. And it just made me think, like, the conversations I have with them are very similar to the conversations that I have with conservative Christians who are also irritated with me because I'm a woman pastor, because I have more progressive views. And I want to talk a little bit about what a fundamentalist perspective is. So first of all, fundamentalism is usually a very black and white thinking. It's thinking in absolutes. It's us and them. It's in, it's out. It's black, it's white. And you'll often use words and have understandings of, well, they're all this way. And when I'm talking to people who are more fundamentalist Christian or fundamentalist conservative Christian, and again, I don't want to use absolutes with everything, but I tend to see that they will say, we have the truth, the whole truth, and my interpretation of the Bible is the right way, and anyone who disagrees with that is wrong or potentially dangerous or bad. And oftentimes they can look at other religions too and not know anything about those other religions and describe those other religions and faiths in a way that is belittling, dismissive, and not recognizable to people of that faith and belief. So if you disagree with me and who I am as a profession and whatever, and I asked you, describe what I believe in a way I would understand, could you do that? And vice versa. Can you describe Islam in a way that a Muslim person would recognize as being true? Can you do that with Judaism, Hinduism, atheism, Wicca, New Age spirituality? I hear so much dismissiveness of all sorts of faith and spiritualities, lumping in these entire groups into they're all this way, they're all this way. And I've never found that to be true. I've done a lot of work reading and educating and meeting people of different faiths and spiritualities and no faith. And I've had lots of conversations with people who are atheist. And some of those can be wonderful conversations. So again, we recognize, and many people who are more progressive are irritated and frustrated with people who are in religion that have a very fundamentalist point of view, that say, yeah, you're going to hell because you don't have my particular belief. So what's interesting is when that same mindset is now shifted over to someone of no belief. So instead of you are going to hell because you don't believe like me, shift it over to anyone who has any belief at all is stupid, okay? All of y'all believe this stupid thing, and you're all stupid, and you're all this way. That is fundamentalism. Now, I want to have a caveat here. Again, as I said, I know many atheists. There are many atheists close in my life, dear people that I love. And one of the things that allows our relationship to be as good as it is I honor where they are in their life. They honor where I am. And we can still have conversations about important things. And we're not trying to convert or convince one another. We have open conversation. We try to understand each other. And so to me, that open-mindedness can be true in any faith or no faith. That ability to listen to other people. And we often agree on a lot of the same values that may or may not be a part of religion, such as we all want a better world where there's no poverty, where there's no more war, no more tyranny and fascism. We tend to have an anti-racist perspective, an anti-sexist perspective, an anti-homophobic perspective. So there's a lot we're on the same page about. I also want to acknowledge that a lot of people who might claim the agnostic or atheist point of view at times have had a really negative experience with religion, which is 100% valid. I do have a video, which I'm linking in the description, about religious trauma, which I have studied and had many conversations with people who've had bad experiences with church. So I 100% realize that that is a reality. And I acknowledge that it's easy to just close that door and to be cynical and angry and just be like, I'm done with it. They're all just a bunch of this. I get it. However, that leads to a fundamentalist point of view, which we are all subject to doing when we're feeling traumatized or cynical or angry. And again, a fundamentalist atheist would say things like, all pastors are tax evading, corrupt, taking advantage of widows, pedophile frauds. Okay? They'll often describe beliefs in a way that I would not recognize as my own, such as, you, fool, believe in a daddy in the sky who, I've heard this, all of this, raped a virgin, Mary, to produce a son that he ended up killing violently. And I do not recognize any part of that statement as being valid at all. None of it. It is dismissive, it is crass, and it is refusing any sort of conversation or opening any door to what I might actually believe. Here's the thing. When we grow up in the world, our brains are positioned to only understand things in black and white and absolutes. That is just how little kids are. If you notice and have a conversation with little kids, they really have a hard time seeing the gray in things. But as our brain shifts, and a lot of people, not everybody's, but once we hit about 12, 13, our brain does shift to allow us to be able to incorporate more gray and more color. This is an absolutely fascinating time in education of any kind, including religious education. I believe, to encourage people to start seeing life beyond the black and white, to start seeing metaphor and symbolism and archetypes and the gray, to see the complexity of the world, that there really aren't just absolute moral absolutes that we just like. There's so much complexity to life. And instead of viewing an and or, we think of a yes and that opens up the complexity of the world. Yes, I love my faith, and I admit that people have corrupted and hurt others with the faith. Yes, you can believe whatever you want to. I don't care. And I encourage you not to stop at cynicism, fear, and black and white thinking about anything or anyone. Again, you don't have to believe what I believe at all. But as humans, if we never try to understand each other in good faith, to be able to name each other's beliefs in a way that they see as true, we're not contributing to a peaceful world. We're perpetuating a worldview that has produced and is still producing violent thoughts, violent words, and violent actions. And I don't want to be a part of that. I want to be a part of building a world that is better for all of us, and I think we can do better. I'm seeing right now people who I agree with politically, and if you haven't figured out, or this is your first time checking me out, I am more progressive. I'm pretty progressive. And there are people who I agree with politically, but they can be pulled into being mean-spirited, dismissive, cynical, just the very things they hate about conservatives. The very sort of black and white dismissiveness that they hate about conservatives, but somehow it's okay because we're doing it. And I also want to acknowledge, yes, there is a time for us to be angry and for us to speak our truth. There is pain and trauma that needs to be raised to the surface. There are harmful behaviors and thoughts that we must reject. But the minute we go to all atheists, all Muslims, all pastors, all Christians, all Democrats, all Republicans, we're no longer speaking truth. We're speaking from anger and trauma and fear, and I get that. But if we are going to start healing the world, we need to start looking at the places of trauma within us. That is really the best place to start, because we can point our fingers at the whole world and everything that's wrong with everybody else. But a great place to start is right here. So, for the sake of your peace, for the sake of peace in the world, I encourage you to just think about that. I'm still working on it. I still get triggered. I still have knee-jerk reactions. I am still learning. I'm still working at it. But I do not want to land at cynicism, and I don't want to land in black and white thinking, because I know that's not reality. And more than anything, I am a seeker of truth. That's why I call myself a spiritual seeker. I'm still trying to find the big, beautiful picture. And I encourage you to do the same in your own way, in your own journey. All right. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.